And I believe that for a conference like this especially, you want to use the simplest tools that work. The more bells and whistles you have, the more it buries the message under bells and whistles. If you have lots of complex plans and tools, you just have more ways things can break. If you have time to make a really polished presentation, you can do that, but don't make stress over it. I love building slides with PowerPoint, so it's not stress for me. But that's me. Sometimes I do exactly the opposite, and I just teach from the Sketchpad, our Sketch app. I just teach from that and let the thing go the direction it wants to go in response to student questions. So do the high polish if that appeals to you, but just treat it like a glorified chalkboard, or for those of you who are too young to remember chalkboards, whiteboards. That's fine too. Lots of great teaching happens that way. Then consider both limitations and advantages of remote presentations. Limitations are, again, you can't walk around and look over their shoulder. That's one really big limitation. Another limitation is the technology itself. Sometimes way out of your control. I did a presentation 2 years ago at FireCon with my friends Maya Cleve as editor and Jane Noel as illustrator. We did a 4-part presentation called The Instant Book Show. In part 1, I dictated a story live in front of the audience based on prompts they gave me. In part 2, Maya edited it live, and so they learned the editing process. In part 3, Jane illustrated it live, and they learned the illustration process. And in part 4, I published it live, except right in the middle of it, a thunderstorm came and took out my internet, and the satellite modem I was using at the time is a 10-minute reboot cycle. So I was offline for 10 minutes of the peak of the presentation. Oh well, that's one of the limitations of the remote presentations. On the other hand, things like you can have chat back and forth. You can have files passed back and forth. You can have students carrying on their own back channel, which sounds like disruptive because then they're not paying attention to you. But it might be a way that they're answering each other's questions and trying to help each other learn. So there are some advantages in the remote presentations as well. Now, how do you conduct it? You might do something that's very polished and scripted presentation with questions at the end. You might do questions during. That's my preference, but it's my preference. It doesn't have to be yours. You might do something that's 100% questions. If you're coming in as a subject matter expert and your subject is horses in medieval stories, then you might give a 5-minute intro at the start and then just answer questions all the time, just for the rest of the hour. Any of these work, pick one and go with it. Be flexible, because sometimes students aren't. Students are people. People can be weird sometimes. Sometimes you've got it in your head that questions will be at the end, and you've got a student that just can't get past this question. Be flexible. You can go with that. Now, if you get a student who just can't stop asking question after question after question, you might have to say, okay, these are cool things, but they're getting off our track. Can we talk about these after class? Because I want to give them the attention they deserve. I've only ever seen, and I've never seen it at FireCon, I've only ever seen one conference where the panel moderator had to tell an audience member to shut up. That was an ugly situation. Nobody wanted it to get that bad, but you've got 5 panelists and 40 people in the room and one person doing all the talking. That one had to be stopped. If you run into that, try to gentle them aside.